Hello, welcome back. This is probably going to be the last video of 2018, and as you have noticed, we made about 150 videos, I think, so 100 videos this year. Mostly because I had something to say and something to explain in support of the Facebook group that we are involved in, and just because I got quite a lot of new stuff and I had stuff to talk about. In the last few weeks it becomes less and less. It might be less for a while now, simply because I don't have much to add to the conversation. And as you notice, I'm not really reviewing stuff that I don't own. I'm not that kind of a YouTuber, so yeah, that's what it is. So again, happy holidays, and let's make one more video. And this video is basically to convince me if I should get another lens. So I'm really pondering adding the 24 1.4 G Master to my kit. But for me, as one of the few rules that I have, I want to make sure that it still fits in my bag. So I might have to drop another lens, and I'm kind of wondering what would I do. So another issue or claim that I've been making on the Facebook groups, if people ask, is basically two of them. First, we hear a lot of questions of people asking, what lens should I bring if I only have room for two lenses? I'm not sure why this is such a popular question. I guess people want to go traveling and then yeah, are pondering about that. And I always sort of, and the counter argument to this would be, do I get an a7 III or a7R III? And I always answer, get an a7R III and use the crop to basically compensate for you having less lenses with you. And I think it makes sense, but I wouldn't say I've never tested it, but I figured yesterday it was a boring day, and as you can see it was quite dull outside, and it was raining after I took these shots, so I was only able to go out very quickly and took some bad pictures just to convince myself, hey, does these claims actually make sense? So what I did is I took two great lenses, or three actually great lenses with me, and I compared two things. The first one was using as a reference the 55mm Carl Zeiss lens, which we all know and love, and we know that it's sharp. It's a prime lens, and compare that to my 16 to 35 G Master lens, of course also a great lens, but it's a zoom. And what happened if I overshoot, so if I crop into the 35mm to make it comparable with the 55. So basically 55mm prime against a 35mm zoom in crop mode. What would happen, and it would actually be useful in day-to-day life, and can you get away with it? So what we are seeing first is at the first shot I took was indeed with the 35mm in crop mode. Of course I did a crop in camera, you can also do it after the fact, but for this case it was easier. And you can indeed see that we have 5100 by 3400 pixels, still quite a large file, 18 megapixels, and compare that to the 55. So here's the 55 shot, and here is the GM shot. And again, of course, one of them is already cropped and they're not totally the same. There might be some contrast differences, and the light changed a little bit. But in general, I would argue there's not much between them, right? Of course, if we zoom in, we can zoom in much further on one than on the other, but even with the 18 megapixels, we are still having quite a big picture, right? So if we zoom into this one, I think I put the focus point on the bridge, or I know that I put it on the bridge. And you can see there's still plenty of detail in this picture. I'm using the new Lightroom CC, which I normally use on the iPad, and I love it, but the same code base on an old Macintosh, which is also doing a screen recording at the same time, is not making it too happy. But you can see we still have a lot of detail even if we go into pixel mode here. And we could crop, I would argue, still quite nicely, about 50%, and still have a pretty good image to work with. Now if you compare this to the 55, and I'll do the same zoom in, again I focused on this point. Of course you can see once it's loaded there's more detail because we can go in deeper. If you compare this object, for example, and again the sign, You can see that the detail is there. Again, I didn't do any sharpening or other things that kind of might be needed or get them closer. But you can see if you compare this shot to this shot, of course we can't zoom as far as anymore because we already did a crop to begin with, but we are using a 35mm lens basically into, what would this be, 70mm or something like that. But this is of course in 55mm, 55mm normal mode compared. And I think the claim that I've been making and others have been making, hey, you can use 42 megapixels to do a nice crop in and basically extend your lenses, is a valid one. I think this kind of proves my point. So let's go to another example where I've used 3 different lenses, and I did one thing extra here that I also took a nice cutout, or it's not a nice picture, but a somewhat logical cutout, and see how they would compare if I compare them apples to apples again. So the first shot again with the Carl Zeiss, and of course if I go into pixel mode, you can see that, for example, the Heineken sign here in this temporary sort of beach bar, and normally in the summer this is kind of like a beach, and well, that's kind of what it is. It's a beach bar. It's one of the few places around my neighborhood because they're still building part of the city here. Anyway, you can see that a focus point was on this. So you can see that this of course is sharp because it's a very sharp lens. But going back to the 35 and again using it in crop mode, so it becomes a 53mm, so very close. You can see I can't zoom in as much anymore, and I can't read the Heineken sign really anymore. But again, I'm now cropping in way further than I'm supposed to do, because if you compare these two images directly, again you can see there are some contrast differences which you can compensate for. There are some differences, but not too much. So the third one I did here is basically I added also the 24 to 105. Right, I took all pictures at 5.6. You can see I'm at 36mm, so it gives you 55 again. And of course I could zoom this one to 55mm right away, which I've done. But again, I wanted to compare. So basically, this is what you would get if you compare again the 16 to 35 against the 24 to 105, and you can see that the zooms are very close in quality to each other. Now this one, of course, I can also use normally zoomed in at 55. You can see I got it to 52, sorry about that. But you can see, of course, now more detail because I can zoom in further, because I haven't pre-cropped in a sense. And this is kind of also interesting for people interested in this zoom lens, right? Of course it's a much slower lens, but you can see that the sharpness of the, and I'm already kind of in the corner, maybe we should go to corner. What is a good point? Let's say the top of this building. You can see this is really the far corner on the 24 to 105 at 50mm. And if you compare that to the Carl Zeiss, oh, I didn't actually, oh yeah, we focused on that part. You can see that they are actually not that, so if you look at this window, right, and then go back to the 55 shot of the 24-105, I would almost say make up your own mind, but I think all 3 of these lenses are quite sharp. So the last pictures I want to show you is a comparison, why I started out, between the Carl Zeiss 55 and the 16 to 35 GM, but then cropped in, basically further cropped into, let's say, somewhat nicer composition, which is kind of a silly thing to say on this bad picture. But let's say, I think I took it from this sign to this car. So you can see there's still a massive crop into this picture, just to kind of yeah, show how they compared. So let's see where they are. So these are these two pictures, right? So not to confuse you more, I have to go back a little bit just to make sure that I picked the correct one. You can see that the Carl Zeiss is the one without the bird, and the GM is the one with the bird into that area. Otherwise, so the Carl Zeiss was the one with the bird. Yeah, I forgot again. So the Carl Zeiss is the one without the bird. Okay. I guess if we have to compare it like this, we know what's up, right? So this is the Carl Zeiss one. Again, now zoomed in even further. We are now at 2000 pixels about. So not saying that I would normally do that, but it does give you an idea how far you can push these lenses. You can see this is the 35 millimeters, basically now way overextended, right? Compared to the Carl Zeiss. The Carl Zeiss was without the bird, so the Carl Zeiss is this one. And this is the GM one. Way overextended. Not saying there are no differences, but keep in mind how far we are pushing these two lenses now, right? So I think my original claim, and also when I now reply again in the next few months in the Facebook groups about, no, you can do this with this lens, please consider this, please consider that. Consider that the extra megapixels can be used to reduce the amount of lenses that you have with you, or you can quite easily, especially in video mode, extend your what you are doing way further than you probably think about. So for example, the 16 to 35 zoom lens you can actually use quite comfortably between, let's say, 16 and 50 to 60 millimeters for video, right? Or a 24 1.4, which would be a very nice lens for, let's say, doing some even some vlogging if people want, because this 1.4 is very fast, it's very light, but you can zoom it both for pictures and especially for video, probably 24 to about 60 millimeters before you see any real problems on 4K video. And the nice thing, especially if you set it up, and I have another video online about this, with your joystick at the back for zooming, you can smoothly zoom on a prime lens into the a7 III and the a7R III, and it's actually a very useful option. So this was more to convince myself, and hopefully it will still be useful for you as a video. I would suggest that if you are interested in, let's say, reducing your lenses by getting a higher megapixel camera and then taking less lenses with you at night, for example, that you only want to take 2 or 3 primes with you and consider the crop to compensate for the loss in range that you have. Yeah, please compare this yourself, because in my opinion it makes perfect sense to do that, and that's what I want to show in this video. So have a nice day and see you in the next one, and probably that will be in 2019. Bye bye.